and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are pleased to have you with us today as we take a look at the full season 1 of Ahsoka, something that I suspect that we both really enjoyed a lot. Before we get going, a little bit of housekeeping here. I want to remind you we are supported by progressivechristianity.org. We encourage you to go check them out. You'll find all kinds of great resources for your progressive Christian needs. And while you're checking them out, make sure that you are following us, the Moonshine Jesus Show, on Facebook, and that you are downloading the podcast in all the places you get your podcast. And most importantly, reminder that we are going to be gleefully spoiling this season for you. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want it to be spoiled, bookmark this and come back to our discussion. We promise you it's going to be a fun one. But more importantly, I want to welcome Caleb. How are you doing today, sir? Good to have you here.
I am glad to be here, and I am glad that we're not just spoiling this, but we're spoiling it gleefully. I like that. Yes, I'm ready to gleefully spoil the show. Yeah.
Well, are you also willing and ready to gleefully enjoy a drink while you do so?
Of course. I am always willing to do that.
What did you end up going with?
Okay, so I'm calling this a galaxy far, far away, since in the second half of the season, they went to a galaxy far, far away. And so this is 1 part rum, 1 part vanilla vodka, 1 part blue curacao. And it has sprinkles and planetary ice cubes. But look, it is black.
Ooh.
You can kind of see the sparkles.
There's stars in it.
Yeah. See, so it's the sprinkles. So it was blue, and I put in these black sprinkles, and slowly it kind of faded through here like galactic swirling until it was a black galaxy. It was as if the dark side was taking over this galaxy, and now there are little sparkles of light and hope as floating around these planets. So that's what I'm drinking, a galaxy far, far away. How about you?
I love it. I didn't have anything nearly that creative. As a matter of fact, I just kind of went with a general Star Wars drink. And admittedly, it is, as Ahsoka was coming out, there was lots of theories about what was going on in this. And one of the big theories, particularly online, was that the Knights of Ren would show up, or that there might be a connection to Kylo Ren. Never happened. Might happen afterwards. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going with a simple drink called a Kylo Ren. It is rye bourbon, lime juice, club soda, and then a nice little lime twist as the trim on it. So cheers to you, sir.
Cheers, Mark.
That'll do. All right, we'll take a quick break, and we will catch you all on the other side. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Won't you shine a light?
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are entering our Geek Out section, where we geek out a little bit because it is Star Wars, and we have to geek out if we're going to talk about Star Wars. But don't worry, we will do this for a few minutes, and then we're going to delve into the theology and politics of Ahsoka. Just in case you missed the Ahsoka bandwagon, let me tell you a little bit about the series. Star Wars Ahsoka is part of the Star Wars franchise, a spin-off from the series, same time frame as that series, and other interconnected spin-offs after the events of Return of the Jedi. It also serves as a continuation to the animated series Star Wars Rebels. And the series Ahsoka Tano, as she followed the fall of the Empire. And so I should also say Ahsoka Tano, even though I knew her name, I think every time someone said that and they said Ahsoka Tano, I thought, who on earth are Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano. Anyway, Ahsoka Tano is who we're talking about. So Mark, this was the second half of the season. Mark, I need to know, what do you think was the best part of the second half of the season, and then why was it the zombie stormtroopers?
Well, I'm not going to take anything away from you on that. The zombie stormtroopers were absolutely fantastic. I think we were all waiting for it. It was great. I loved when it happened. Um, I think for me, and I'll talk about this a little bit in my segment when we go to the theopolitical. I think for me, it was Ahsoka falling into the world between worlds and the events that happened in that space. For me, that was pretty significant, and there was so much running through my head when I saw it, and I loved a lot of the things they did with that sequence. So for you, it was the zombie stormtroopers, right?
I thought that was a lot of fun, and it's the moments where they said, "Has this ever happened before?" No, this is new, and
No.
it was new, right? And I want to know how come zombie
It was.
stormtroopers are better shots than
That did seem
when they
weird, right?
lived the first time.
They actually seemed to be able to hit their target. It's really odd. It's really odd.
They were more of a threat as zombies. Maybe zombies are always more of a threat. I don't know, right? Even if they're stormtroopers,
they're certainly scarier, but aren't they supposed to be slower and not quite as intelligent?
There wasn't a lot of this kind of stuff. It was
it was very different.
Yeah, they're reanimated
It was
and
more,
they've got like targets.
Yeah.
They're good.
Like
They're good. Okay, so I need
ghost or something. So yeah,
that's right. Yes. Okay, so I need to ask you something about your favorite part of the season, the reanimation piece. The one piece I'm curious about that is how does Ahsoka stay alive for that whole time while underwater? She's underwater, and it seems like for a long time. How does she stay alive while she's underwater?
She's a force user, man. There's something innate within her that kept her alive. I also think that it could be. We learn in, I believe it was in Rebels, that we've talked about when we did this the last time about the Mortis gods, about the Father, the Son, and the daughter. And we learned that the daughter's spirit is now in Ahsoka, or at least part of it is, and she is somewhat eternal. Maybe not fully eternal because she has passed away, but has an ability to live for a very long time. So I think it's probably related to one or the other, either the Force itself or the representation of the Force that is the daughter that is now partly within her, which is going to give her some extra abilities that maybe other Force welders don't have. That's my take on it. Did you have a thought on what was going on?
So I thought, well, she's tied in with the Force and all that, but she's still been underwater for a long time. But I'm willing to give her I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt and say, yes, maybe both of those things working together, maybe that is what made it possible. But it was a great sequence, right, where she got to interact with Anakin, and there was a lot of talk online about seeing Anakin back. And about the de-aging technology that they used in the midst of this. So tell me, what was your impression of seeing Anakin interact with Ahsoka and the de-aging technology that they used?
I am not the biggest fan of de-aging in general. Now, maybe that's because the first many times that we saw it, particularly in Star Wars, it was kind of weird. Like they still didn't look human. There was this weird deadness in the eyes, and this time around, I think that they've really made great advancements. He looked a lot like I expected him to look. There was life in the eyes. As long as they're using the original actor in some way or actress and using them and have their consent and they're working along with them, I kind of like it. I think it's kind of cool. My only problem is I do think Star Wars seems to have this incredible resistance to recasting characters. So they use technology to try to deal with it. And I think we're going to see their hand forced because Balin, as we know, Ray Stevenson had passed away before this series was released. He plays a very important role right up to the very end of this, so much so that the second season, which I believe we're going to be getting, needs him in it, and they're going to need to recast him. So I think that it's time for them to be okay with recasting and doing that, even if we're doing looking back into the past and needing to recast the actor so that it's someone who's similar enough, but we're not having to deal with all the technology. I mean, maybe there's too much of a purist in me that way. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I like the qualifications you gave, because that was my impression as well. That I'm okay with de-aging as long as we've got consent from the actor and stuff, because I
Yeah,
think that's one of the things that we've been learning from the writer's strike and the actor
absolutely.
strike and all, is that, like, okay, we need to ensure that that people are, that the actors are, being rewarded for this role. And
Yeah.
I think all the way back to the Future 2, when Crispin Glover was kind of recast, and they put on that mask of his face, and he
Hmm.
sued on behalf of himself and other actors, and that set some
Yeah,
precedents for what
absolutely.
Hollywood is able to do with someone else's likeness. So I think you're right that I liked seeing Hayden Christensen back. I thought that was a nice touch. I thought that he played a significant role. It wasn't just fan service. In
Oh,
fact,
yeah,
it
very
kind of
significant.
redeemed him a little bit in that character.
Mhm.
There was so much backlash after the prequels, that actually, as time has gone on, people have changed their minds some
Yeah,
about that, and
it's
particularly I think Hayden Christensen's performance as Anakin. And
yeah,
so
I agree.
I liked seeing him. And in regards to the recasting, I think one of the reasons why the Star Wars franchise is hesitant about that is because one of the major ways that we've seen that, or one of the major times we've seen that, is in the Solo movie, which just performed so poorly. But I
Yeah,
think that there was a lot
a lot
in
of
that.
reasons. Yeah,
A
and it
lot
had
of reasons.
it had very little to do with the recasting. Like, it wasn't
I
even a
agree.
brilliant recasting, but the
No.
actor did a very fine job, and he had
Yeah.
lots of the mannerisms. I bought him fully as Solo, even though visually there wasn't quite all of that going on. There was just a lot of other things going on there. I disagree. I think there's a different
Yeah.
reason, uh, a much more corporate reason. I think it's merchandising. I think that this is all about, they've got all of these products out there that already have the likenesses of other
Yeah.
people on them, and they don't want to have two of them out there with two different faces, and then you're competing with yourself. And I just think that it's a little bit, there's probably a little bit of corporate greed going on here that's influencing it, unfortunately. That's my take on it. I don't know.
That's a great segue, because I was merchandising has been famously a part of
Yeah,
Star Wars, right?
absolutely.
And maybe most notably in to sell toys to kids. And so I'm wondering about, and I mean, in The Mandalorian, I love The Mandalorian and stuff, but
Mhm.
we've got to admit that a big part of Grogu is selling toys to kids. My daughters, I've got two daughters, and they have never seen anything Star Wars other than Lego Star Wars, and yet we have Grogu all around our house because they love Grogu. My daughter has
I
a
love
Grogu
it.
backpack and lunchbox and all this stuff because it's the merchandising, right? Well,
Yeah,
do you think? Tell me what you think about the turtle-ish characters that are in these the last episode or two. What do you
yeah.
think about them? Are they Ewokish?
I don't think they're Ewokish. They're not quite as adorable. Their little talk is a little adorable. They're kind of weird and kind of like it makes they make sense as nomad characters, because that's the kind of point that this is a dangerous land, and that they're having to move about a lot, and to have this kind of external shell that they can protect themselves in and disguise themselves. So no, I didn't. Grogu, I'm 100% on board. Immediately, the moment I saw Grogu, I went, "Oh, I wonder why we did that." Although I'm really glad they did, because I love the character now. But
Me
I
too.
was
Yeah.
very cynical about it at first. But no, I don't think I don't see them fitting that neatly into that category. They're just not that cute. They're interesting. They're different. But I feel like they serve, like, they make sense within the framework of where they are and what they're doing, and how they live as nomads. I don't know.
You know, I,
It sounds like you were a little more cynical about it than me.
yeah. I mean, they felt a little Ewokish to me, but
Mm,
but I also liked their philosophy, right? That they were not fighters; they were pacifists,
right.
um,
Absolutely.
maybe Ren or Ahsoka, I can't remember. Said, I think it was Ren, said, "Well, don't they have anything stronger than slingshots or whatever?" And he said, "No, they're not fighters." And she said, "Well, how are they going to survive?" And he says, they've managed this long, and I
This
think
long,
that's
yeah.
a good commentary on pacifism. So, you know, hey,
Yes, it
what I
is.
would like to see merchandising of, Mark, the space whales. Wouldn't you love to see some
Pergola.
space whales?
Purgle.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Purgle.
wouldn't that be
Oh, I
great?
think they're incredible.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a giant plush Purgle? Like with
Yeah, I
all
would
the
love
dark
that.
purples and
Yeah.
sparkles from the sky. I think that
I put that in my office.
oh, I would too. There's so much opportunity there. I love that. Yeah, I think that you're onto something. You should contact Star Wars and say, hey, make sure
I
get
want the
get on this
merchandising
thing.
rights for that, please. I'm
Right?
sure they would be very willing to do that. Okay.
I'm sure.
One of the other
Very
questions that
accommodating.
I had was we get these witches, these mothers
Yes.
introduced here, and
Yep.
I'm curious what you think about the use of witches and magic. We've seen more introduction of magic over the years in the Star Wars universe. What do you think about that generally? What do you think about that for the?
Well,
for the
I think
direction?
it's absolutely a horrible thing, and I think it's there just to try to pull people away from Christianity. They're trying to create problems for our kids.
Ban Star Wars. You gotta ban it.
Yeah, we got to
Save
ban
the
Star
kids.
Wars because those
Save
witches,
the kids.
are gonna destroy our children and make it. I think it's brilliant. I love this new use of the Force, bringing that in. You know, it was essentially relegated to legends in the world. I love that Filoni's bringing it back in, and we're getting this, seeing that. Yes, the Force is everywhere, but not everyone uses it the way that Jedis use it. There are lots of other ways to tap into it and use it. I'm hopeful that we're going to see that, much like with the Jedi, you can have good and bad magic with a K, Force users. And I love what they brought to the storyline so far. I think it's very interesting. The fact that they're now traveling back. You know, Palpatine was just scared out of his mind of the Night Sisters, the witches, the Night Sisters, and he banished them and sent them away. I love that we're seeing a storyline where Thrawn's bringing them back to the main galaxy, and we're going to get to see something happen with them. If I had to make my bet, those caskets or cases that he's loading onto his spaceship to bring back, I think that it is chock full of sleeping Night Sisters, and that we're going to see a Night Sister army, which would be incredible to see. And there's so many possibilities with the magic element in it. What did you think? I mean, other than the fact that you're not going to let your kids see it because you don't want to corrupt them away from Christianity.
Oh,
what did you think?
Right, that's right. And I'm actively leading an effort to ban all Star Wars in schools. No, okay. I'm not. I'm just joking about that. No, I think both the fact that that these witches were in this series and the fact that they actually traveled to a different galaxy are going to be very important for the future of Star Wars. So one thing that really impressed me about this season of Ahsoka is that it was bold and it took some chances and it moved Star Wars in some different directions. And I think that's important for keeping things interesting and not just rehashing things over and over again. And I know that, you know, George Lucas likes to talk about the echoes of, you know,
it's like poetry. It rhymes is what he says.
Yes, that's right. It rhymes. Yeah. And so, I get that, but I also like that there's some new movements happening in the poems that we're hearing, and I think that's important to keep people interested.
Completely
so
agree.
Hey, you and I could geek out about Star Wars all day, and we definitely would given the opportunity. But you know what, we also need to talk about the theology and politics of Ahsoka. So just another quick break, elements of the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You're joining us for our Theo Politico segment. And I'm going to jump right in on this. As I told you in kind of our pre-show, Caleb, I've got kind of a long wind-up to my question, so I want to go ahead and spit my words out so we can get to your responses, because I'm really curious about your take on some of this. At the end of episode 4, I think it was episode 4, Ahsoka falls off of a cliff, possibly to her death. At least we're left to believe that. But in episode 5, we learn that she not only has fallen into water, something that I want us to come back to, but that she is in the world between worlds, which we've been introduced to a couple of times already throughout Star Wars, where in this one, she meets her old master, Anakin, and essentially ends up with this opportunity to finish her training with him, which she walked away from. And the way I see it, there are basically 2 main lessons that he's trying to teach her here that she learns. And the first one happens as they revisit a battle where they were while she was still like a young Padawan. And in it, Anakin is constantly telling her that they need to fight. They need to fight. We have to keep fighting. But she resists him in the teaching that he's trying to do, and says, talks about how the Jedi are supposed to be like peacekeepers. But he still says, we have to fight. If you don't fight, you're going to die. And then in the next shot, after he tells her that, he rushes into sort of this fog, and we see an outline of him first, but then we see an outline of Darth Vader. With that full setup that they gave us, what do you think they're trying to tell us here?
Yeah, it was his own actions and his constant inclination towards violence that led him to the dark side of the Force. And so, the Force is supposed to ultimately be about balance, right? And whenever we hear about Jedi, we hear not only about them being peacekeepers, but also about them being people of balance. Right. And so I think just like in all of our lives, balance is important. Like walking the middle path is important, as the Buddhists would say, or moderation is important. That like not allowing ourselves source is really important. And so whenever I saw that, I'm like, oh, they're telling us something significant here. They're telling us that what led him to the Force or to the dark side of the Force, in part, because we know his broader story, but in part was this inclination towards violence and this inclination towards continual motion, and I think we saw the wisdom there of Ahsoka even as a young child. What did you make of that scene?
No, it felt like they were pulling back the veil to the lesson that there's no fork in the road of violence that leads to peace, kind of thing. It makes me think of Jesus's words of all that take up the sword will die by the sword, which leads me to my next question. Like, that's a teaching of a lot of great spiritual thinkers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What is it about the human mentality, about humanity in general, that it seems to be this constant rush to violence? What's that all about? We see the cycle repeating itself all the time. Right now, we're seeing it in Israel with Hamas. That cycle of violence repeating itself, and without taking sides, we're seeing a people who have experienced near extinction, trying to extinguish another group of people who started who was occupied, but also launched a great amount of violence at them. We see. I'm saying that as a cycle that we're seeing, and I'm curious, what is it about humanity that we always have this rush to violence?
Yeah, so I think evolutionarily speaking, like we are wired to think in tribal terms. And this is a conversation I had with folks, with a lot of folks, but folks even yesterday after church, is that like we are wired to want to be with people who are like us, because for a long time, that's how we survived. And so it's just been over the past few thousand years that we have been organizing ourselves into societies where we've needed to kind of put aside differences and get along. And I think our brains are still learning how to do that. And so I think whenever there is any kind of an action that harms someone who we determine is like us in some way, that our brain, our wiring up there makes us want to go into camps. And so let's use Israel-Palestine as an example. I think we've seen that as the news against the about this Hamas attack has come out. Well, like there's a lot of people lack the context of like the state of Israel.
Right.
Oppression of Palestine, and especially, I mean, for at least the past 15 years, but I mean, ever since the displacement in 1948, right? When right 2/3 of people in Gaza are displaced people from the Arab-Israeli War in 1948, and so so people just have a knee-jerk reaction, and they get into camps without full understanding of what's going on, and certainly without the complexity. And I mean, I think we've seen that. In the United States, you know, I've had friends at Israeli, pro-Israeli rallies and friends at pro-Palestinian rallies. And I think that people fail to see that that like, you know, a peaceful solution has to include the liberation of Palestine. That you can't have peace when there's oppression, and so. So I think it's the wiring. I think that's part of it. That one thing religion does when it's at its best is try to help us rewire our brains to stop, think, and come to a peaceful solution. What's your take on why?
No, I agree. I agree. When religion's at its best, it helps us unwire that. Unfortunately, I think a lot of religion, particularly Christianity, even we're seeing it in Islam, we're seeing it in a lot. Right now, we're seeing it in Judaism as well. Is wired to go back to that lizard brain tribalism protective mode. And honestly, I'm going to be a little judgmental here. I think a lot of that goes back to that violence is easy. Violence is immediate. Violence has an instant gratification. Peace takes time. Peace takes forethought, planning, structuring, seeing and understanding everyone in the situation and the complexity of the system and figuring out how it fits together and having to work towards and struggle and sometimes going forwards and sometimes going backwards. It's not easy. It's a longer road, but it's a better road in the long run, I think. I'm going to keep moving on. We could just focus on this the whole time. In a slightly related question, though, so Balin goes through his own sort of struggle throughout this series, and you kind of hear it when he's like, it'd be a shame to have to kill her, like he doesn't really want to kill her, and then he feels this call from the land that he's in, and ultimately he tells Sabine Wren, he's like, what? Not Sabine, Shin Hati, says, what I seek is a beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end. So my question is, can we bring the cycle of violence to an end, or is humanity doomed to repeat it over and over again?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I found that very poignant because he had been talking about rise and falls of empire in the midst of that. And, you know, I couldn't help but think about like the United States and our role as empire and how long the United States is going to be around, as he was talking about that. And so I think the only way that we bring any cycle of violence to an end is by trying to live into, what Jesus called the reign of God, what Martin Luther King Jr. called the beloved community, but like this vision for the future where everyone is respected, where we look at people and see people not by their race or their ethnicity, by the language they speak, by the differences that they have from us, but, you know, as human beings with inherent worth and dignity, or if we want to use religious language, as like children of God, you know, who are reflections of the divine image, whatever language we want to use, but people who are worthy just because they are human beings. And I think it is conscious effort that we have to reform ourselves, and but man, that's a lot of work. And like how everybody does that, I don't know. I think it's something that you've got to put a mental block on, and you've got to train yourself to rethink things, and then aside from that we then have to pass policies to reinforce, like, how do we guard the inherent worth and dignity of every person? And honestly, we're not doing real great with that here in the
Right.
United States, Mark. And
Well,
the United
yeah.
States is one of the better places. I mean, if we're looking globally. So I don't know. What
No,
do you
I
think?
completely, no, I completely agree, and I think you're right on the money on all of that. I think it's a long road. That, like I said earlier, I think that war and violence is fast. Peace is a longer road, and that we are on that road. That we are enlightening minds, and we are working towards that. We as humans want immediate responses and immediate, but I think that we are working on it. There are so many folks out there who are being awoken to the importance of peace and the path it takes to get there. I'm going to keep moving on because there's the second part of what I think was trying to be taught there. So Ahsoka has a chance to kill Vader in this, what happens in the world between worlds. But she ends up throwing her lightsaber away, kind of like Luke in Return of the Jedi. And when she throws it away, she says, "I choose to live." I think that's the other lesson that he's trying to teach her here, that surviving isn't the same as living, which I think is related to all the things that we've been talking about. And while I think that's an important thing for us to remember as individuals, I'm curious to hear what role you think that kind of thinking, that surviving isn't the same as living, what kind of thinking, what role that plays in issues of social justice.
Yeah, so like a lot of people are like surviving, but they're not able to live or to thrive. I mean, I think what the gospel is about at its heart is about being able to thrive, having what you need to be able to thrive. And so let's take indigenous peoples, for instance. Last Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day. How about indigenous folks who are not given what they need by the U.S. government? They have been, generation after generation stripped of the resources that they have, that they need to be able to not only just like be alive, but to be able to thrive in the world. And you can say the same about most communities of color in the United States, all communities of color in the United States. And I think that at its heart, that's what the idea of reparations is about saying, hey, generations of wealth have been ripped away from these groups of people, and it has ripped away their ability to thrive. What are we going to do about that? So I think there's wisdom in delineating a difference between just surviving and actually being alive and being able to thrive in the world.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What do you think?
I completely do. No, I agree with you, and I could extrapolate a little bit, but I'm not going to because we're running short on this segment already. But we promised we would get back, or at least I promised we would get back to the idea that she falls into water. So it seems to me this lesson that we're talking about, that she survived, that surviving isn't the same as living, seems to me that she learns this. Particularly if you just look at her personality early in this season, people were complaining about how Ahsoka's personality was so serious and so very different from what she was in Rebels. But after this episode, the very next episode, she meets Ezra, and she runs up and she hugs him and she's smiling and she's joking and she's laughing. It really seems like she learns this lesson. Do you think there's an intentional connection with that change and her new way of life, with her being submerged in water?
It's baptism, right? Right. It's a not so subtle metaphor for like baptism, right? Like she's coming out of the water with a new life, a new perspective, and I think you're right. You can definitely see the change in this episode, even when she decides to pursue Sabine and doesn't judge her for the decisions that she's made. And I mean, even as she's talking to the droid, Hyung, and who says that that she's made Huyang, that she said she made the only decision that she could, and that whenever Ahsoka confronts her about it, it says, yeah, I understand. I've made decisions like this too. And it's a different way of looking at the world than she kind of had at the beginning. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The old life is gone. The new life's begun. So I have like 5 more questions that I could ask you. I'm not going to do it. We've already run over on this segment. So we're going to take a quick drop and come back to one of our favorite segments, the Make Me Look Stupid segment.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We're entering our final segment for today, the Make Me Look Stupid segment, where we try to make our co-hosts look stupid, or at least ask them a question that we've been wondering about. Thanks for hanging on for this long. Hang on just a little bit longer.
As you were asking that question, I realized that in your case, you're not really trying to make me look stupid. You're just trying to underscore my stupidity. I just realized that that's really it's an easier road for you. It really is. I don't know.
I like it. Yeah. It's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's all perspective. No, Mark. Today, I'm sure you look stupid, but I don't think I'm gonna make you look stupid. I just want your perspective on something, Mark. So there's a conversation between Lord Balin and his Padawan, and he said they're talking about this new galaxy, and they kind of, and Lord Balin says stories of the galaxy are considered folk tales long forgotten, to which his Padawan says, with good reason, some stories are just stories. And then it does turn out that the stories are true, but there's this kind of in between time where they're not sure if they're true or not. Can you draw any parallels between that and the Bible?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, some stories are not true. I disagree that they don't have meaning, though. Biblically, we have so many stories, 66 books in the Bible told by so many people, some of them meant for all these different purposes. Yeah. And some of them are based on, there's such an amazing amount of differences. Some are somewhat true. Some are based on truths and are extrapolated. Some are stories that are told to teach us lessons. But the thing that I always come back to 100 times over and over again is that while not all stories are true, all stories have truth. And that is what we get from the Bible. We get truth about what our spiritual ancestors understood their relationship to God to look like and what that meant to them. We get very truthful stories of how they understood that. And then we get stories that people try to relate about this person named Jesus that they experienced or heard stories about and was significant to them in a way that they wanted to make sure that other people understood and were able to learn and grow from it. So I don't think stories should ever be forgotten. And I don't think there's ever any truth that stories sometimes don't have meaning. They always have meaning.
Yeah.
What would be your take?
I think that's important, Mark, because I think especially as I hear people deconstructing and doing a lot of work on, basically giving up biblical inerrancy and saying, well, okay, if this isn't the literal word of God, then is it all just fairy tales that are made up? And I think the distinction that you gave is very helpful for people who are on that journey, is that okay, you don't have to believe that the Bible is inerrant to believe that it has value, even that it can be one of the most significant books in your life to guide the way you live your life. It's just that it's just a different way of looking at it and looking at the stories and recognizing that, that maybe some of them have more value than others for our lives in the 21st century, that maybe some of them have different points than others, and that's okay. And that some
are you saying that historical criticism matters? But that's a thing.
I think I am arguing for biblical historical criticism.
Wow!
Yes,
Wow!
I think
wow!
I know it's shocking. People. I know it's really shocking that I would care about such a thing. But I feel like that's a lot of the work we do in church and in progressive Christianity, is to say you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, that you can
Yeah.
still find meaning in this,
Mhm.
but to do it in a way that's authentic, that allows you to understand what people were actually talking about. And maybe that's more authentic to the text than pretending like God wrote it. When I mean, obviously, people who were writing it didn't think that.
Mhm.
Okay, so thank you for helping me understand that, Mark. Do you have a question for
Yeah,
me?
I'm sure that I have greatly advanced your understanding of it. I suspect that you probably could add an amazing amount to the little tiny window that I opened there.
I'm sure we could both talk about this for a very long time, but
All right, that's fair.
you've
That's
got
fair.
it. But
That's
you're
fair.
going to make me look stupid now. So
Well, I don't know. We'll see. So, I loved near the end of
mhm,
the season.
yeah,
We end up with Balin going out on his own,
mhm,
pursuing this whatever is calling him,
yeah,
and we see him on this massive statue of a man pointing in a direction, and he walks out to the end of that hand and looks in the direction it's pointing. What do you think Balin is looking for at the end of the episode? What is it that was calling him, that he's looking for and seeking out?
I don't think he knows yet what he's looking for, other than just feeling a sense of it's feeling like the Force kind of calling him. I think maybe what we're going to see is more about the origins of Jedi and the Force, and how all of that began. So I think, I mean, it's complicated now that the actor is dead. So we'll see what they decide to do. But I think it would be interesting to see both, maybe him have a change of heart based on what he discovers, and
Yeah.
maybe to go back to Jedi, maybe to join Ahsoka and Sabine as they try to figure out how to get back to their own galaxy. I think that would be interesting. What do you think is happening? What do you think he's looking at?
Um, I think it's tied back to his, he's been on this pursuit, and I
Mhm.
think incorrectly, where he wants to see everything be okay. He ultimately, weirdly, wants to bring peace to the galaxy. He happens to think that the Empire, you need to go with the strongest force to be able to bring peace to the Empire. And so that's why he's semi sort of backing the Empire and trying to bring Thrawn back and all of that. But, when he says, what I seek is a beginning, so I may finally bring this cycle to an end. I think that
Mhm.
points back to the cycle of violence. He wants peace. So I think that this is yet again Filoni pulling out some of the legends stuff that he's introduced to us in the Mortis Gods, the Father, the Son, the Daughter. The Father has died, the Son has died, the Daughter is now in Ahsoka. But one of the things we haven't talked any about yet, which I think that might be what's happening, is a person who's known as the Mother. That's obviously missing in the Father, the Son, the Daughter, who was a human that served the Father, the Son, and the Daughter, was scared of losing her family, and ended up taking in the font of power and the pool of knowledge. It's got lots of rings and echoes of Genesis, because the gods had deemed that you couldn't do that, and becomes this very powerful being that gets locked away. I think that being is what he sees as the key to understanding the Force, the key to understanding how to bring peace, and that being is locked up in the world between worlds, and that the statue is pointing to that beam of light, which I think is a temple, and all of the doors to the world of worlds are at temples. I think it's pointing to the temple where the Mother is locked up, and that he's hoping to free her and learn from her in a way that he can bring peace and break the cycle of violence. I may be reading a whole lot too much into that.
I was just thinking, I'm like, I can't wait to come back to this episode whenever we talk about season 2 to
We'll
see
see.
to see how you did on that,
Mm,
Mark.
mm.
So I would love to see that, and I can't wait for season 2. I think
Who
it's gonna be
knows? Yeah,
a lot of fun.
I'm excited about it, and I'm even excited. Like, all of this is leading up to a Filoni movie, which is going to be the Bad Batch. It's going to be Rebels. It's going to be this. It's going to be the Mandalorian. It's going to be so many parts. It's sort of going to be the Avengers of Star Wars. all of the characters that we know in between the original series and the last three in terms of the trilogy. All of our folks are going to be there. We're going to see all of them coming together in one movie. It's going to be incredible. Probably going to be 3 or 4 years before we see it, but
hey, if
great
it's half
setup
as
so
good as Avengers 2012,
Woo.
woo!
There you go.
Yeah, here's
Right?
hoping. But you know how Star
Yeah.
Wars is. The track record is
Absolutely.
like a roller coaster.
Filoni seems to be doing a reasonably good job. He misses some things, but his reimagination, his revisioning, and fixing some of the previous problems, he seems to do a reasonably good job. I'm hopeful. I'm just going to say I'm hopeful.
That hopeful. Good. You're good.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good way to end in talking about the end of Ahsoka. Being hopeful.
Yeah,
I
enough.
like that.
Fair enough.
Okay, so we're not ready for season 2 of Ahsoka yet.
Not yet.
But we've got to have a
Unfortunately.
show next week. Even though
Yeah.
I think we would both like to, talk more about Ahsoka. Do you have any suggestions on what we might talk about next week?
I actually do. I've been looking at like things that we might be able to talk about for the rest of this year. And like December is full of stuff. We're going to be fine in December. November, I don't know. But in between is a little bit more difficult. We don't have a lot of new stuff coming up. So I have this idea, at least for October, for the next 2 weeks. Why don't we do sort of, since Halloween's coming up, sci-fi horror kind of movies?
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
That could be fun. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
And there's one that just hit. I think it's on Netflix. I'd have to look it up to know 100%. But it's a movie that came out last year from Jordan Peele, who's doing I am not a big horror genre fan, but Jordan Peele is doing really exceptional work. And he came out with a movie last year called Nope. And the synopsis of it is basically that a man and his sister discovers something sinister in the skies above their California horse ranch. And while the owner of a not nearby theme park sort of tries to profit from the otherworldly phenomenon, but it wreaks havoc in their lives, and they all have to kind of come together in this big. Anyway, it is interesting. It's sci-fi. It's horror. There's jump scares. I think that'd be a pretty fun thing for us to cover leading into Halloween. What do you think?
That sounds great. I love Jordan Peele's directorial style, and I love the way that he uses those movies as a way to talk about what's going on in society as well. So
100%.
I'm game. Next week, Nope. Everyone has plenty of time to watch that. Nope. Yes.
Nope.
Yes. Wait. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes
Not
to
nope
no.
to nope.
There you go.
Yes to nope.
Nope.
Okay. Yes to nope. We'll talk about it
Yes to
next
nope.
week.
But nope to the horror. Nope. Wait, you're going to go there?
Horror.
Nope. That's scary. Nope.
Nope. But yes to the sci-fi. It's sci-fi horror.
Absolutely.
It's going to be good. Social commentary. Absolutely. Yes to nope. Watch it, and we'll see you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.